Welcome to Critical Crime. I'm your host Philly, and on this week's episode, we'll be doing things a bit different. On today's episode, we'll be diving into multiple cases about different gangs in America and their history. If you enjoy this type of content, drop a like and comment down below so YouTube can spread the video out more. It also helps with analytics a lot. But enough of that, let's dive into the cases. Case 1. Demetrius Edward Flenory Sr., aka Big Meech, and his brother Terry Lee Flenory, aka Southwest T, began selling $50 bags of cocaine on the streets of Detroit during their high school years in the late 1980s. For this reason, their first group was called the 50 Boys. By the year 2000, the Flenory brothers had established a substantial operation and oversaw managing the distribution of several kilos of cocaine in several states across the United States, including Alabama, California, and Georgia. According to a 2-year FBI investigation, over 500 people were suspected to be members of the Flenory organization across the country. The brothers' rivalry caused the split of the organization in around 2003, when T left Atlanta to set up his own business in Los Angeles, while Meech stayed at the key distribution base there. They had a major falling out by 2003 and really interacted with one another after that. During a phone call that T had, the DEA wiretapped it, and T is recalled to have voiced his fear that his brother was attracting bad attention to the business because of his excessive partying. When the Flenories were charged, the government had 900 pages of written transcripts of wiretap conversations from T's phone over a 5-month period. In November 2007, the brothers admitted that they were engaged in an ongoing criminal enterprise. In September 2008, both brothers were sentenced to 30 years in prison for running a countrywide cocaine trafficking operation between 2000 and 2005. A large-scale DEA drug raid in October 2005 allegedly resulted in the arrest of 30 BMF members. The DEA seized 2.5 kilos of cocaine, $3 million in cash, and other valuables during this raid. Prior to the October 2005 operation, the DEA had already caught 17 BMF members and collected 632 kilos of cocaine, $5.3 million in cash, and $5.7 million in assets. They claimed that BMF was responsible for shipping more than 2,500 kilograms of cocaine throughout the country each month. According to the Continuing Criminal Enterprise Statute, Demetrius and Terry Flenory were charged with conspiracy to distribute 5 kilograms or more of cocaine, possession with intent to distribute more than 500 grams of cocaine, conspiracy to launder money, and 2 counts of possession with intent to distribute more than 5 kilograms of cocaine. Demetrius was captured inside a large mansion in a Dallas suburb. The officers located a little amount of marijuana and a few MDA pills inside. There were multiple firearms in a safe inside the house, as well as several automobiles. When Terry was detained in St. Louis, small amounts of marijuana and firearms were located throughout his residence, which were also occupied by other people. Demetrius Flenory is currently completing his sentence at a federal correctional institution in Sheridan. He is expected to be released on May 5, 2028, shortly before his 60th birthday. Terry Flenory was granted compassionate release on May 5, 2020 due to his health concerns and the decision by the Federal Bureau of Prisons to release some offenders in order to prevent the COVID-19 outbreak from spreading within federal prisons. Terry Flenory was sentenced to house arrest. Demetrius Flenory also requested his release under the same circumstance, but a federal court refused the motion, citing that it would be premature to allow his parole because his jail record indicates he hasn't changed and continues to portray himself as a drug kingpin. In addition to drug usage, the judge observed that his disciplinary record includes infractions such as possessing a mobile phone and firearms. He also had a few penalties for drug use and drug possession. Case 2. The origins of gang activity in South Central Los Angeles can be traced back to a number of events in the 1950s, including the post-World War II economic downturn that caused unemployment and poverty, the exclusion of young African-American men from groups such as the Boy Scouts, which led to the emergence of black street clubs, and the dissolution of black nationalist movements such as the Black Panther Party and the Black Power movement. Local gang members from South Central Los Angeles, West and East Sides, led by Stanley Tukey Williams and Raymond Lee Washington, banded together in 1969 to battle rival street gangs. The bulk of the participants were teens. However, in his memoirs, Blue Rage and Black Redemption, Williams appears to dismiss the often cited inception of the year 1969. In his book, Williams also disputed the claims that the group was a branch of the Black Panther Party, but was created with a social goal, claiming it was depicted a fighting alliance against street gangs, adding nothing more, nothing less. Williams, a Washington High School alumnus, led the West Side Crips, while Washington, also a Washington High School graduate, led the East Side Crips. Curtis Budamaro, a Crip founding member, is also credited for wearing a blue bandana as part of his color-coordinated costume of blue Levi's, a blue shirt, and a dark blue suspenders. Morrow was honored by wearing a blue bandana after he was shot and killed on February 23, 1973. The U was later associated with the Crips. By 1978, there are 45 Crip gangs, sometimes known as sets, in Los Angeles. They are crucial in the synthesis of amphetamines, PCP, and marijuana. Williams, a West Side Crips member, was arrested and charged with 4 murders on March 11. Washington was shot and killed on August 9. Following Washington's assassination, other Crip factions began fighting one another because he had opposed Crip faction violence. Following the outsurge of the Crips leadership, the Rolling 60s neighborhood Crips and the 8th Trade Gangster Crips engaged in a brutal gang war. As a result, neighboring Crips sets selected sides and joined either the neighborhood Crips or the Gangster Crips, fighting a long battle in South Central and other areas. Following Washington's death, the Hoover Crips and the East Coast Crips from East Los Angeles severed their ties. By 1980, the Crips and the Bloods were at odds with one another. When crack cocaine hit the streets and Crip groups began distributing in the early 1980s, the gang numbers and influence rose significantly. As a result of their huge profits, many Crips expanded into other cities and states. As a result, the number of Crip members grew considerably, and by the late 1980s, the street gang was one of the largest in the country. In 1999, over 30,000 members of at least 600 Crip organizations were transporting drugs in the United States. Case 3. The Bloods gang was formed in the beginning to take on the influence of the Crips in Los Angeles. The war began in the late 1960s when Raymond Washington and other Crips attacked Sylvester Scott and Benton Owens, 2 students at Centennial High School in Compton, California. Scott later founded the Piru Street Gang, the first Bloods organization. Owens then created the West Piru Gang. The Bloods were founded to provide its members with protection against the Crips. Among non-Crips, the term Blood was widely employed. On March 21, 1972, 20 Crips attacked and robbed Robert Ballou Jr. outside the Hollywood Palladium, right after Wilson Pickett and Curtis Mayfield performed. Ballou was beaten to death after refusing to give up his leather jacket. The incident gained extensive media coverage and the Crips went on to assault others, raising their profile. Several non-Crip gangs formed during this time period were unable to compete with the Crips and were concerned about the increase in Crip assaults. They routinely clashed with other gangs such as the Pirus, Black P-Stones, Athens, Park Boys, and others. On June 5, 1972, 3 months after Ballou's death, Frederick Blood Country Garrett was murdered by a West Side Crip. This was the Crips' first murder against a rival gang, which prompted rival gangs to come together. The Brims replied by murdering Thomas Ellis, a founding member of the West Side Crips, on August 4, 1972. In late 1972, the Pirus held a conference in their territory to discuss the escalating intimidation and harassment from the Crips. Some gangs felt repressed by the Crips joined the Pirus in order to form a new federation of non-Crip neighborhoods. The mating gave birth to the Bloods. As a result, the Pirus were recognized as the Bloods' forefathers. In 1978, there were 15 Blood sets. Bloods were still outnumbered 3-1 by the Crips. In order to assert their dominance, the Bloods increased their brutality. In the 1980s, the Bloods began trafficking cocaine in Los Angeles. The number of states where the Bloods was prevalent, as well as its membership, swiftly rose. These improvements were mostly driven by the revenue from the cocaine sales. Because of the tremendous wealth, members were able to relocate to different cities and states. The East Coast and West Coast Bloods are often referred jointly as the Bloods by the general public. Despite their disparate history, each of these groups identify to themselves as Bloods. United Blood Nation was founded in 1993 at the George Motkins Detention Center on Rikers Island as a means of protecting African American gang members from Latter Kings and ETAs. UBN is a youth alliance of gangs, most of whom are African American heritage. Following their release from prison, UBN leaders returned to their native New York regions where they continue to operate under the Bloods brand while recruiting new members. UBN has between 7,000 and 15,000 members in the eastern United States. They make their money through illicit activities, including selling crack cocaine and smuggling narcotics into jails and prisons. Case 4. Many people have heard the Gangster Disciples and the Black Disciple War that has been brewing in the streets of Chicago, but many people don't know the story that started it. Here's the story. Several groups of teens from Hyde Park, Inglewood, and Kenwood banded together in 1958 to fight crime and violence. The original members of the group, who included Richard Strong, David Barksdale, Mingo Shred, and Prince Oldtimer, Kilroy, Leonard Longstreet, Nightwalker, and others, called themselves the Devil Disciples. At the outset of the year 1961, David Barksdale, also known as King David, assumed full control of the Devil's Disciples and assigned numerous members to different positions of authorities across the neighborhoods. Barksdale intended to recruit members of a local street gang into the Disciples. After facing competition from other gangs, David Barksdale established the Black Disciple Nation in 1966 to attract more members and enhance recruiting. The head of the rival gang, Gangster Disciples, Larry Hoover, merged with Barksdale's group in 1969 to form a new organization they named the Black Gangster Disciple Nation. Larry Hoover and one of the alliance's members were arrested long after it was created, accused of murder, and ultimately convicted and sentenced to between 150 and 200 years in jail. Now that Larry was behind bars, Barksdale had complete control of the gang. Barksdale passed away on September 2, 1974, at the age of 27 from issues related to his kidneys. Conflict emerged in the Black Gangster Disciple Nation after Barksdale's unexpected death. After Barksdale died, the majority of BGDN saw a need to become more united, but there were many who disagreed. As a result of ideological disputes, two separate groups emerged: Gangster Disciples and Black Disciples. As a result, there was violence on the streets between these two very gangs immediately after they were formed. With the help of the Gangster Disciples, Mickey Bull was able to take control of the Black Disciples, but there was a brief pause from the bloodshed thanks to Bull's leadership, but it all resumed after his murder by Gangster Disciples in August 1991. 3 Gangster Disciples were gunned down on August 7, 1991, when an immediate retaliation from the Black Disciples erupted into a frenzy. To this day, the war between the BDs and GDs continues. For more episodes like this, tune into our Instagram or TikTok at Critical Crime 1, where we post shorts multiple times a week. And check out our YouTube channel at Critical Crime, where we drop episodes every Thursday. But for now, stay critical. Until next time.